Two and a high chair for smoking. Chapter 1, Part 9. Not many guys worked at the restaurant. There was one waiter, Keith, a holdover from the days of the previous owner. He was quite religious and looked a bit like a frog, although those two factoids were not connected in any meaningful way. Keith eventually moved on, as did Mark. When males left, they were replaced with females. Just the way it went. Most guys that I talked to in the staff room didn't work there. They were husbands and boyfriends. Craig was Laurie's boyfriend. I met him one night when he came into the staff room to wait for her. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place his face. His quiet, slightly gruff voice also rang a bell. Where had I seen him before? Then it clicked. Sean and I had been out for coffee somewhere. The place was empty. In came a guy, heavy-set, with short, curly hair. He looked agitated about something. The assistant manager seemed to know him. They sat down together and talked. I looked at the big guy and noticed his sweatshirt had some blood on it. There had been a fight, he said, someone looking for trouble. So, what did you do? Asked a friend. Did you hit him? Fucking rights I hit him. The other guy had started it. Craig had finished it. Finished him. Craig had big hands and thick fingers. He was a shit kicker, but Laurie kept him on a leash. That was the dynamic. He was a dog, potentially dangerous, but she kept him in line. She trained him. Judging from the comments that she occasionally made in the staff room, old Craig apparently took direction quite well, which Laurie liked just fine. Part 10. No, marriage is a contract, Harold. A very strong contract. I pretended not to hear, but here I did. I saw the back of the man's head and the woman's face. They were an older couple. He was bald, completely bald, and she was wrinkled. And then I was out of earshot, on my way with that snippet of conversation snagged in my cerebrum. The old couple didn't even notice me. Why would they? I was just part of the scenery. A dishwasher in a faded green apron, carrying an empty bus tub, looking straight ahead. I may as well have been a breeze passing their table. Part of life in the restaurant was overhearing customers' conversations. Most of them were so fragmentary that they made no sense. I'd hear a few words as I passed by a table, then the next, and the one after that. Countless scraps of simple chat, heart-to-heart, deep discussion, girly gossip, petty argument, and small talk blended till they were a stew of indecipherable babble. Once in a while, I heard a full sentence or two, enough to know what the people were talking about. Was that old couple talking about divorce? I wondered. Maybe. The tone of the woman's voice hadn't exactly been chirpy. Was this how decades of marriage came to an end? Sitting at a table above the food court in a shopping mall? In the front pass bar, I could hear customers at the table behind the wall. It was amazing how personal people could get in public. No one confessed to murder or anything like that, but occasionally a pair of voices would suddenly drop to a hush. A sure sign that they were talking about something confidential. Those were rare cases. Most people didn't seem to care, especially if they were in a booth. People seemed to think the padding was soundproof. It wasn't. Part 11. School was out. High school, whatever it had meant, was now behind me. Plans for college had fallen through, and I learned what happens if you don't have a contingency plan. Not much. At least I had a job. On the cusp of 18, that was something, at least. I was working and earning a wage. There was something to be said for employment. Not long after graduation, things seemed to be looking up. One of the cooks, a forgettable short-timer, had just been canned, and the boss was looking for a replacement. Want to move up, Steve? Try life outside the dish pit? It was an offer I couldn't refuse. I traded in my dishwashing gloves and green apron for a white line cook shirt, hairnet, and a few other refinements. I already knew the kitchen well. I had observed it from the dish pit for almost a year. The place was a pressure cooker. Dimly, I wondered whether this promotion was a good idea or not. There were problems from the start. I had trouble remembering how to cook many of the dishes, so the boss relegated me to the deep fryer most of the time, while the other cooks worked the grill, sandwich board, and stovetop. I did try, but it seemed I wasn't cut out to be a line cook. I was the scullion, scurrying around with plates of fish, French fries, and chicken strips. Working in the kitchen stank, and very quickly, so did I. My fingers reeked of grease from the deep fryer. The smell wouldn't come off no matter how hard I scrubbed my hands after a shift. Handling hot food and plates burned my fingers and gave me blisters. "You'll get used to it," said Max, trying to be supportive. "Your nerve endings will get desensitized, and you'll be able to pick up things hotter than you ever thought possible." He smiled. When orders came in, each line cook had to do their part. If we all worked well as a team, like cogs in a well-oiled machine, food could be produced in a timely fashion. It would be edible and presentable. People would pay for it. Everyone would be happy. Completing orders, the boss said, could be fun. A challenge. One afternoon, we ran out of sliced cucumbers. The boss sent me back to the prep area. I grabbed a box from the walk-in fridge and turned on the slicer, a fiendish machine with a razor-sharp, semicircular blade. It had 2 settings, manual and automatic. We needed cukes quickly, so I switched the setting to automatic. I'll be fast, I thought. But things went wrong. A cucumber came loose and got sliced in half lengthwise. A waste. I could hear the clamor of the lunch rush in the kitchen. Voices filled with urgency. I had to hurry up. The next cucumber started to slide toward the blade too, so I reached out to stop it. Suddenly there was blood. A lot of blood. And pain. A sharp, searing pain, unlike anything I had ever felt before. Under the blade, instead of sliced cucumber, was a long, thick chunk of flesh with a thin wedge of fingernail attached. The boss drove me to the hospital. He was pissed. I held up my injured finger, wrapped in a towel. "Steve, I'm so disappointed in you." He glared at me as he drove. "And don't get any blood on the seat." After waiting for a while in the emergency room, I was able to see a doctor. He bandaged me up. My wounded finger, covered with layers of gauze, looked like a cocoon. The boss had already gone back to the restaurant, so I caught a bus home. The next week, I went to my family doctor, who expressed dissatisfaction with the first doctor's handiwork. The blood had soaked through the bandage and dried. When he took off the gauze and bandage, the wound, which had begun to heal, was torn open. There it was again, a screeching, unbearable agony that I would never forget. I had a month off work. The promotion was terminated, and I was sent back to the dish pit. My first September out of high school loomed. Part 12. I lived across the street from my old high school. In the morning, I could see people I had gone to school with just a few months before. But things were different now. The restaurant was waiting for me. School was the old world. Walking into the mall on a weekday morning felt unnatural, as if I should be somewhere else. But I had nowhere else to be. The weekly schedule on the wall outside the boss's office gave my days structure. The lunch rush gave them purpose. "Stephen, we need cutlery at the front, like yesterday." "Stephen, a baby just puked everywhere in the woman's bathroom. Could you get a mop in there now?" "Stephen, the tubs are overflowing in the back pass bar." "Stephen, we need dinner plates up here right now." "Stephen, you've got to change the Coke." What was I doing with my life? I wasn't going to college. I was out of high school and working at the mall. Shitty. On days when the mall closed early, the last customers would leave around 5. The servers would finish up, and then the cooks would go. I was always the last one to leave. In senior year, I had auditioned for the theater program at the local college, but failed to get in. With no backup plan, I decided to take a year off and get some money together. In the meantime, I joined an agency that promised to get me work as an extra in TV and film. There was still hope. They pocketed my registration fee and promptly forgot about me. After badgering them several times, they finally found me my first and last gig as an extra. It was a TV movie about a boy trying to bring his divorced parents back together. The lead would go on to play Spider-Man, a random brush with a rising star. There were times someone I recognized from high school would come in to the restaurant. After the obligatory, "How's it going?" came the next question. "You going to college?" "Taking a year off to get some money together," I'd reply. But the truth was, I had no idea. I was lost. After 13 years with my bum in a seat, I was clueless how to function out of it. No wonder everyone went to college. It provided continuity. At least I had a job. Being jobless and out of school would have been worse. After work, I usually had a tall glass of Coke and a smoke in the staff room before walking home. The mall was closed, and not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. That was not always the case, however, so we called in some experts. A couple of exterminators came by periodically to leave cyanide-based rodenticidal traps that kept the problem to a minimum. They sometimes took a break and chatted with me in the staff room after I finished cleaning up. Part 13. The mall was not a particularly crime-ridden place, unless you counted the exploitation of its minimum wage workforce. Yes, stores had to keep an eye out for shoplifters, but that went with the territory. On rare occasions, a turf war broke out between two subspecies of mall rat in the food court, but that was the exception rather than the rule. The mall was a place of peace. The responsibility for keeping that peace was held by the security guards. One of them I called Todd. I had a dog called Todd once. He was friendly, loyal, a good dog. Not the brightest, but he loved going for walks. Eventually he got old, and we had him put down. Todd the security guard was young and seemed to enjoy his job. He had short hair and a goatee he must have spent a lot of time trimming. A well-groomed lad. You could always see him talking to girls in the food court, sporting a goofy grin. Todd looked like he spent a lot of time in the gym. He filled out the white, short-sleeved security guard shirt with pride. He wouldn't be in the mall forever. I didn't know what ambitions he had. Sometimes I wondered what kind of ambition I had. But he was fit enough to run away far, far away from the place. I wished him luck. Tubby, on the other hand, was not going to run anywhere, or after anyone. I hoped he never had to run after a shoplifter. He was not, unlike his nickname suggested, Tubby, or even chubby. He was fat. Very fat. He ate in the food court every day. Unlike Todd, who usually bagged his own lunch, Tubby patronized the fast food places. His lunches kept them in business during slow periods. He didn't always eat alone, however. He sometimes dined with Doug. A man like Doug requires an explanation. There was something clearly wrong with him. He had likely been released from a psychiatric facility when the government decided money would be better spent somewhere other than caring for its most vulnerable citizens. Doug was old, but it was hard to tell just how old. He had a grizzled look and some missing teeth. He would saunter into the food court and sit down to have a conversation with thin air. Leaning back, with his arms resting on either side of the table's backrest, he would nod, giggle, laugh, gesticulate, and sometimes get quite annoyed with his invisible friend. He wore a tan trench coat, regardless of the weather, beneath which was a faded t-shirt with the words Elvis's #1 fan in large block letters. He was as much a character in this drama as any of the others that passed through the mall during those years. I noticed him all the time. Where did he live? How did he survive? No one seemed to know. The mall gave him shelter, a sense of safety, and even companionship. Doug was known to the security guards and the staff of some of the stores. Always the unexpected visitor. Never unwelcome, just unexpected. Part 14. The staff room. I spent countless hours there over the years. Before work, at break, after work. There were 2 tables, both brown. The floor was brown too. Dark brown. The walls were slightly yellowed by time and nicotine. Unbelievably, there was a smoking and non-smoking section in the staff room, as if there was a difference in air toxicity between the 2 tables. There was a folding door to give us privacy from customers walking by. It kept the smoke and the smell of our food in the room, too. As horrible as that was, we kept the door closed most of the time. We valued privacy. Behind the smoking table, in the corner, was a payphone. To contact the outside world, you needed 25 cents. On the table was a stack of women's magazines. When I was bored, I flipped through them. There were hardly any articles, I noticed. Over half of the pages were taken up by ads. After a bit of searching, a reader's persistence would pay off, and they would be inundated with advice on how to please a man, get started on a lucrative career, build their self-esteem, lose weight, and otherwise live life to the fullest. Despite the apparent intent to better the lives of its readers, every single page of these magazines seemed designed to perpetuate an unhealthy cycle of envy and self-loathing. Mel liked to shit over these magazines, figuratively speaking. Someone had hurt her, really given her heart a pounding. I heard somewhere that behind every cynic is a disappointed idealist, and that was my impression of Mel. Deep down, she wanted all the fairy tales to be real, but had had one too many guys fuck her around. She was done with it. She wasn't done with men, per se, just through seeking a connection with them. One night, counting her tips, with a cigarette dangling from the corner of her mouth, she talked about recently having had sex with some guy, a coke dealer. He had asked her if she wanted some. She declined. He cut up a couple of lines, did them, and then did her. Or perhaps she did him. Who knew? For her, it was just a booty call. Relationships suck, she said, with the same cheeriness that she used when describing daily specials. They're not worth it. On the floor with customers, Mel was upbeat and bubbly. Beneath that veneer, though, was a heart as bitter and black as burnt toast. Part 15. When it was busy, it was a bad idea to carry the bus tubs up the stairs and past the kitchen pass bar. Servers were constantly going up to get orders and coming down with plates full of hot food. It was an accident waiting to happen. I wasn't going to be a part of it. Instead, I walked through the back pass bar, past the boss's office, up the graded stairs to the prep area, and then finally around the corner to the dish pit. It took a little longer, a little more legwork, but it was safer. Every time I turned the corner after carrying a bus tub up the graded stairs, I would see the slicer. I couldn't look at it without remembering the chunk of flesh from my finger, the wedge of nail, the blood on the stainless steel counter, and the pain. Oh, the pain. In front of the delivery elevator, there was a small radio with a single cassette deck. Cooks sometimes listened to music as they filled bacon trays, mixed gravy, or risked life and limb with that fucking slicer. The sound was high-pitched and tinny, pure treble. It was something, though. Better than nothing. I couldn't really hear it from the dish pit. The dishwasher was too loud. But every time I went through the prep area, I would get a few seconds of music. After closing, I would sometimes turn up the volume all the way so I could listen to it while I stacked the dishes. It was company when no one else was around. My music at work. Once or twice, Lori or Amy came up the back stairs and turned it down. There are still 2 tables and smoking, Stephen. We can hear it all the way out there. One of the cooks, a short timer with curly red hair and a crooked, scarred face, also liked to turn up the tunes. He was older and always kept it tuned to a classic rock station. When he wasn't busy, he would talk music. We both liked a lot of older stuff. Believe it or not, he once said, the Everly Brothers used to be the bad boys of rock and roll. Really? No way. Yep, they were. They were badass. Sometimes I'd put down the tub of dishes and talk with them. Being a full-time dish pig was not usually fun, but it had its moments. Part 16. There were buses that went to the mall, but none went by my house. I didn't mind. I was used to the walk. There was a bus that crossed the halfway point, but it came only once an hour, and it hardly seemed worth the wait. But on some days, the stars aligned. When I came to that spot on such a morning, I would see the bus coming in the distance. I had enough bus change in my pocket. Why not? I joined the lineup. It was late spring, and everything was green. The sun felt warm on my skin. After months of rain and cold wind, it was finally t-shirt season. There was a girl in front of me wearing a pink top. Her blonde hair was slightly wet, and it occurred to me that she had probably just come out of the shower before leaving her house. I could smell her shampoo, light and fruity, in the air. For a moment, I imagined being in the shower with her. I could talk to her. Maybe she was going to the mall too. But what would I say? Nah, better just to have this moment and realize how lucky I was to be alive. The bus pulled up and we all got on. I looked at her one last time. One day, I'd do it. There were so many smells on the bus. The fragrance of her shampoo was soon lost. I sat down. The windows were open and let in the breeze as the bus picked up speed. It was going to be a good day, just 4 hours at the mall, then off at 3. I couldn't remember what the girl looked like, but her bare shoulders, blonde hair, and the smell of her shampoo stayed with me. Part 17. A year after returning to the dish pit, the boss gave me a second chance. The full-time hostess was getting promoted to server, and the position was open. I gave you a chance in the kitchen, and you know what happened. If this doesn't work out, I really don't know what we're going to do. The boss had a point. If I didn't work out as host, that would be it. He would have to let me go. I couldn't blame him. Besides, it would be too embarrassing for me to go back to the dish pit yet again. As host, I would greet customers, bring them to a table, and get them drinks if the server was busy. If there was a lineup, I would take names. I would also clean, set tables, and work the cash. Complaints? That was me. Takeout orders? That was me too. The cash register used a touchscreen software program. I could order food, check tables, add or delete items, and print up bills. Over time, I got to know the system very well. This is how you promo a meal, the boss said, tapping the screen to bring up a list of options. 10%, 50%, and 100%. If someone complains, talk to me or Lori first. Don't just give out discounts willy-nilly, or we'll be out of business in no time. After a while, I got to know the servers in ways that I hadn't before. The customers, too. Being a host gave me a different perspective on how the restaurant functioned. I got a little bit more respect, too. Are you the manager? that question. Oh, that question. No one ever asked out of curiosity. When customers were dissatisfied with their food or discovered a cockroach in their coffee, they had two choices: lash out at the server or ask for the boss. Servers couldn't give away meals for free, so most customers asked to speak to the person in charge, which they assumed was me. No. I was the only guy on the floor, so people automatically thought I was running the show. It didn't matter that I was younger than the servers. I was the only one not wearing a skirt, so I had a target on my back. The boss spent most of his time in the kitchen or office. He was never comfortable dealing with customers. I was his shield. That was fine. I was stoked just to be out of the dish pit. Now it was my turn to yell at some miserable schlep and tell them to get out there and change some bus tubs.